some voice actors tend to ad-lib lines sometimes, like the whole infamous Super Size Me line. What do you do with that when they do that? Do you get them to do it over? What makes you decide to include that line or have them retake it?
Yeah. I actually think it's kind of a myth that people believe there's so much ad-libbing that's going on. I've been a voice actor for 17 years, and I don't think that there's so much ad-libbing as people think. Sometimes when you're in the studio, you read a line, and for whatever reason it wasn't working, and as an actor who's only responsible for that one character, that's your whole responsibility, you get some inspiration like, oh, what if we tried this instead? And that's a discussion that happens with the director, and then you decide to use that line or not use that line. It's not like the actor just spontaneously says something and the director doesn't notice and that just gets released on the DVD or something. So I think it's kind of a myth with fans that there's so much ad-libbing that's happening. At least that's my experience.
It happens occasionally, and usually the ad-libs don't make it to the final mix.
Yeah,
Usually it's just to try and make the director laugh if you're moving ahead of schedule. You know?
Yeah, you're constrained by the mouth movements, you know. There's only so much you can do. The one exception was recently on this French film, Mia and the Magoo. I recorded James Woods remotely. So we weren't in the same room, we were over Skype, and he's a screen actor. He's not, he's done ADR, but he brings himself to his part and blurs the lines and makes it him and his own, and he adds a lot of stuff. He did about 16 takes of each line, and every time would add something else to the end of it. And he made this little character, Jojo, who's like sort of a scumbag card guy who's probably swindling people and sort of on the run from some people looking for him. And he made him this really funny, charming little scumbag. And he would add so much stuff. I got to bring in a couple little things here and there, usually for offlines when he's bantering with his card buddies. But there were so many extra things there. We're talking about maybe having an extra, which is always ad-lib stuff, but most of it couldn't be used because it would just step on other people's lines, and there was no place in the piece because it's already been animated. But it was really cool, and he was very funny.
You know what this scumbag like James Woods? I'm thinking Casino right now. He's a good example. He's like this fast-talking jerk. Fantastic.
I was just gonna say agree.
Yeah, agreed. Yes?
I have a question about romanizations. This is one thing I was actually, Gundam Unicorn, restarted this big, huge internet debate over whether it's supposed to be pronounced Peru or Pull, and who ends up deciding that? Because in the video games it's pronounced Peru, but in Unicorn it's Pull again. Right.
That's mostly Mark Simmons. Was that one that he weighed in on, or because we have the producers from Japan in the room, and that's a whole other thing. So it's officially like Sunrise Blessed. They're there for every line that we record, and it's a marathon. We're living in the studio for like a week. Shower, maybe, probably not. Brush teeth next week. Yeah, but it's like Samson and his hair. You wash off the strength like you cut it like Delilah. Never mind. But that's all. All that stuff gets weighed and discussed, and it's either Sunrise producers who say that's what it's got to be, and we have Nobuo is a producer who worked on all the other American releases, and then Mark Simmons, who is weighing in on everything as well. So that goes through a couple levels of stuff. I'm not sure who worked on the games, but for the anime, it should all be consistent.
I noticed that actually in the Japanese version, Full Frontal's voice actor actually pronounces it Pull, which is a big deal. Which is a big deal for Japanese. So yeah, I guess that.
Because it's got L's. What are you saying?
Yeah. No. He actually pronounces it. So
yeah,
that's not final. I guess nothing is.
Yeah, that's the thing. And Sunrise. We've had discussions about, do we think, that's like the whole Alucard thing. Have you heard this story? This is a Natalis Japanese story. He was doing Helsing, and they're like, everything's good except the main character's name is Alucard. And he was like, Nani? No, it's Alucard. They're like, no, Alucard. And he's like, no, Alucard. They won't go back and forth, and he's like, no, it's an RL thing, and we would pronounce it Alucard. And they're like, no, it's Alucard because it's Dracula backwards. So then you gotta go back and say, cool, that's odd. Yeah, we pronounce that Dracula, things like that.
I love that story. And You know, just I would say in general, not because I didn't obviously work on Gundam Unicorn, but just in general with romanization. I mean, think about my friend, or friend of all, I guess all of ours, Toshi Yoshida, who is a Japanese American, and he likes to point out things like, for example, in Full Metal Alchemist, the main character, well, in English, we did not call him Edward Eriku. We called him Edward Elric. So a lot of times there are Western names, and we know how to pronounce them, so we are allowed to pronounce them correctly. Now, when it's a Japanese name, and I really appreciate this coming from Toshi because obviously he is fluent bilingually, but you want to, theoretically, I think hopefully this is achievable with most shows, that you're pronouncing the Japanese name correctly as much as possible, but not so much that it sounds ridiculous, and also in a way that can be consistent. And I love that he points out that we don't say that we drive our Toyota, and we do not go to the karaoke. And so there are a lot of Japanese words that are in common American usage that we don't pronounce correctly, and no one seems to have a problem with that.
Yeah.
You said karaoke, but I was just saying, in general, you know, people talk about the karaoke machines.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite westernization one, I was doing Berserk, and there was a character, and in the script we got translated, his name was spelled LLL. What?
What the what?
We're like, oh, come on, oh, get them. What? We figured it was probably an Earl or something. Yeah, like Duke of Earl. So we're like, we're gonna call it Old Earl. I think that's
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who didn't ask?
Say a show was made a couple of decades ago, or maybe historical, you have to choose a phrase that makes sense for either the time period the show takes place in or when the show was made. Like if you say the 70s show, someone makes a reference from the 90s on X.
Yes,
Like
that is an awesome question about like things set in certain time periods. I worked on Megazone 1, 2, 3, and it was made in the early 80s and very much looks like the early 80s, so everything was totally gnarly and it was rad, and we were using all these colloquialisms from the early 80s. Similarly, a show that I worked on, Chrono Crusade, Matt Greenfield, who was the director and writer on the show was set in the late 20s. So again, the internet is a wonderful thing. He was able to go online and do some research about different slang. So we were
That's
saying,
the bee's knees.
yeah, with bee's knees, applesauce, you know, we were using all of those colloquialisms from that time because it feels better and it's more authentic to the piece. And you don't want suddenly in 1929 in America, you know, that people are saying, oh, that's my bad, or something like, you know, something that's completely out of context. So I think it makes such a difference to the piece, to the era that it's in, using the correct colloquialisms.
Is in Lupin the Third, and someone says, "Oh, people are silly like they're from The Simpsons."
What?
It was a show named in the 70s,
Yeah.
so I was like, "Where did they come up with that idea?"
That's
You're psychic.
horrible.
Clairvoyant.
That is so deuced up.
It's funny too, because you have to also kind of think like the scope of like how long you think the show is going to be popular. Like most anime is probably going to be popular a few years within a span of what, like 5 years since it comes out and stuff. But like non-anime related, like some people complain about Robin Williams in Aladdin. Him playing the genie, he did such a great job and stuff, but because he ad-libbed so much pop culture references that were so time period specific, that like now in terms of that piece, it's dated. It's really dated. So for kids, the later generation kids to go back and watch that, they're not going to get any of those references, and it loses a huge kind of chunk of it.
Yeah, you do have to write a fine line on that.
Yeah, if you're going to use a reference, it's got to be something timeless. Like my standbys are, of course, Star Wars. Somebody in just about every show I've ever written or directed says, I've got a bad feeling about this. But that is in many shows already in the Japanese. You know, it's there. It's, you know, it's one you can get away with. I like to occasionally sneak in a reference to Princess Bride. And it's always Big Lebowski. If you see an angry mob in something that I've written or directed, somebody is yelling, "This aggression will not stand, man."
I just directed Wallace Shawn. I wonder, and I never had him say inconceivable, not once, not in any way. I never said it to him. I could barely
You
not.
wanted to
Oh.
so bad.
I was burning.
Didn't you?
Yeah, like a deuce. I don't know what that means. I was doing Tezuka's Phoenix, Hinotori, and this one story arc takes place. I mean, the thing spans millennia. It goes from like the beginning of time to the end of time, and then time starting over again, or at least the Earth. Anyway, so there's this whole thing, and it takes place in like ancient times, and we were like in the 3rd century of the blah blah blah, and the fire season of the whatever, and this PBS producer was like, you should just say like December 19th, and we were like, no, there's no Gregorian calendar, and like it wouldn't be appropriate to measure time in that way, and we were like, okay, fine, whatever.
I think we're out of time. I've got to go.
Okay. Thanks, guys.